Hello, everybody, and welcome. Happy New Year! Crikey, first of the Beecraft Hangouts of this year. Thank you for joining us. If you are, I think it's quite an exciting one. Actually, we've got a great panel ahead of us talking about beekeeping with children, which is arguably, funny enough, in all of the beekeeping that I've ever done, is a question that I get asked a lot from other parents, which is how do I get my kids involved in beekeeping? So. I hope you'll enjoy this with our panel. I'm just going to sort of quickly go through them as I go across, and then we'll get a more sort of like an elongated introduction as we go. So first of all, Wendy, who's normally on, who works with me from the marketing side. Hi, Wendy.
Hi there, James, and everybody else.
Happy New Year. We've got Sarah all the way from the sunny US. Or is it snowy or sunny at the moment?
Oh gosh, it's there's snow.
Oh, I wish we had some snow. It's just wet here. But Sarah's the US ambassador for Bee World and is also very, very highly regarded in the US for her work with kids and the American Beekeeping Federation. So fantastic to have you on, Sarah. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me.
We've also got our regular Rodri, who's had a hard day at work. Sorry, Rodri.
Hello. Yeah.
Tired day. And then we've got Yvonne from the Huddersfield Beekeepers Association who's joining us. And thanks for joining us, Yvonne. Great to have you on.
Hi, James. Thank you. I'm looking forward to this, actually.
I know, it's a bit scary, this, isn't it? We've got. I feel a bit sorry for Sarah, given we've got someone from Huddersfield, someone from Wales, and it's not going to be easy on the accents. And I probably talk.
I hope you all can understand me, and I don't need subtitles.
You'll be fine. Very, very clear. And then lastly, we're coming to Sarah, a good friend of mine, Sarah from the Hen Corner, who is also a pleasure to have you back on, Sarah.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm hoping, Mark, can we hear you, Mark? I'm not sure if we can hear Mark. We've got Mark. I so want Mark to be on, the forage officer from the London Beekeepers Association. No, I can't hear you, Mark. It's a shame. It's a shame. We'll keep on trying. We're going to try and get Mark on because obviously from there's a lot of schools in urban areas, and I know Mark is absolutely well versed in telling us all about sort of his experiences in London, which will be great. Beekeeping in schools. I think we should probably start with that because I've had an unbelievable amount of discussions and questions about beekeeping in schools. So Yvonne, I thought I'd just start with you. Would you mind just sharing with us what you look after at the moment, and if anybody else here works with schools and beekeeping, perhaps we'll come on to you after that. So Yvonne, what do you currently do, and what are you in charge of?
Right. Well, my job role at the school is what's called an activity support worker, and I got involved with the school about probably coming up to 3 years ago, when the head teacher at the time approached me in my capacity as secretary for Huddersfield Beekeepers to do an assembly for the kids, which I did, and her sort of dream was to have bees in school. Now, it's a school in Huddersfield called Ashbrow, and we have about 4 or 5 acres. We're a forest school, and we have an apiary which currently has 9 overwintering colonies. So we're very fortunate, and our year 4 children are the beekeepers. So that's basically what my role is. And we also keep hens and ducks as well, so one there for Hen Corner.
That's a nice link, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
How lucky that. I mean,
I feel a visit coming on. I feel a visit
down.
But how wonderful to have enough room for as many colonies as that in a school. I mean, equally, one of the questions I had actually was, when schools are getting involved in beekeeping, are you finding it's the schools coming to you, or are you going to the school? So in your case, you said the head teacher came to you.
The school came to me, which was encouraging because it's normally the other way around.
I was about to say, because that obviously gets over that sort of the barrier of teachers being worried about, what's going to happen and all this sort of stuff. Sort of bringing on to that. Sarah, your experience with schools, I know you've done some work with schools. Have you found it that? Has the head teacher come to you, or are you going to them, or how's that working?
Generally, it's the head teacher coming to me, but to be honest, they often start on the chicken front and then see that we've got bees, and they say, oh, how can we have bees, and how can we teach our children about bees. It's a really key part of the curriculum. We find early on in school life they're looking at life cycles, and so they can do chicken and egg, they can do caterpillar and butterfly, but they're really interested in looking at the life cycle of the bee because of all the impact on food and the environment. It's just got so many cross-curricular links.
Carl, I tell you what, that's lucky on both parts, isn't it? Because I can imagine, yeah, if they're coming to you, it makes life an awful lot easier. Sarah, from your side in the US, is it a similar sort of thing? Do people come to the American Beekeeping Federation and say, we want to keep bees, or are you finding beekeepers have to go to school? How are you finding it from your side?
It's really, it's quite diverse. So probably the most popular request that I get is from either the Parent-Teacher Association or the principal, which is the headmaster of the school, will contact me and not necessarily want bees at the school, but just want to learn about bees. So they ask me if I can come and put on a program to engage the kids in the world of beekeeping and talk about bees and just help them learn more about bees. There are a small number of schools that do want to have bees on campus, and I'm actually working on that right now in collaboration with a beekeeper in Washington, D.C. and the Bee Lab at the University of California, Davis, to come up with a curriculum and kind of more of a guidance for schools that want to have bees at the school, and coming up with curriculum and steps to go through as to how to get bees. There's a lot of bee fear in the U.S., and the kids are fine with it, the teachers are always fine with it, but the lawyers or the superintendents, usually when it gets to them, there's a lot of red tape, and it's really, really hard to kind of convince them that there's not going to be swarms of Africanized bees chasing kids around on the playground.
Sensationalistic, but probably true. Hey, I mean, they can have, but they can't have hives. So it's a strange one. Yeah, it's a rather contentious thing to say, but I get it. I do get it. And what you've just brought up there is quite an interesting thing, because I suppose certainly within the UK side, and Yvonne and Sarah, I'm interested in what you say here. There's probably the two levels, isn't there? From a beekeeper's perspective, there's going in there and just teaching the theory side, which obviously there's an unbelievable amount to it, and I've done that with a couple of schools already. But then there's the real practical element of actually doing what you've done there, Yvonne, and actually working together with the school on that. So I'm going to start with the theory side, because one of the questions that we had coming in from, where is it, Sharon, and actually Sharon is based over in America, so there's going to be an interesting sort of crossover here again with you, Sarah, in this, which is saying, how do you see beekeeping being worked into the classroom where you are? We're trying to bringing it into some of the classrooms here. Are you seeing a cohesive curriculum? My sort of thought is there probably isn't. And maybe we could do some crossover sort of US and UK. How do you find that, Yvonne, with your school? Is there any sort of curriculum side there or not?
We use, at Ashbrown, we use a company called Cornerstones, which provide educational products for primary schools. And they have about, well, more than 80 themed projects that fit nicely in with the national curriculum. So there's things like, what have we got? We're covering topics like wriggle and crawl, scrumdiddlyumptious, which is another topic on food, pollination, and how bees fit in with our own food and growing food. Another topic is allotment. So it all fits in nicely. You know, what we've done at school is we try and fit it in with English, with maths, with say something like wax. You know, the melting of the wax, it's going from solid to liquid, liquid to solid. You can cover it in every single part of the national curriculum. It's brilliant. And I just, you know, just needs a few inventive ways in which to do it.
And just so that everybody is clear, your group, Yvonne, at the school you're working at is with what's classified as a Year 4.
Year 4s, yeah.
So
yeah.
Just to clarify in terms of age, how old is that?
8, 9.
8 or 9-year-olds. And
Yeah.
Sarah, is that similar to your age group in what you're dealing with?
Yeah, so we are going to start developing curriculum for most likely 3rd or 4th graders, so about that age group, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then also for high school. So the classes that we're partnering with from the local school district here are in home economics class. So we're actually going to be using beehives to teach about nutrition and healthy eating and cooking and what we can, how not only honey can be used, but how bees are such an important part of our food system and our healthy food system. And that class, the home economics class, is open to freshmen through seniors. So kind of a general curriculum just about the basics of nutrition and all that bees do for us, as well as beekeeping, which I think can definitely, we're not going to get too far into the science of anything, even though we will have hive monitors set up where we measure temperature and hive weight, and maybe start developing some models for tracking beekeeping and climate change in the West. But for the most part, we're looking at 3rd and 4th grade and high school.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. I love the concept of having the hive monitors involved. I mean, we're talking from Scrumdiddlyunctious at the sort of the year 4 side, which I love. Yvonne, the ability to link it in, and I hadn't even thought of that, with the counting for the maths and the science and
absolutely, it crosses over. It crosses over the whole curriculum. It really does.
But then the lovely thing, seeing that transition through to the sort of the more advanced science stuff of having the hive monitors in place and actually looking at all of that. I mean, Christ, I'm a bit of a tech geek. I don't know if any of you have seen these new, I don't know if you've heard of the Internet of Things, where everything is connected to everything else, and you've got these hives which are connected to your mobile phone automatically, and you can see the updates. I mean, kids love this sort of stuff.
Yeah. I think that there hasn't been anything completely revolutionary in beekeeping in maybe the last 150 years. And in the last couple of years, beekeeping and tech have really started coming together, and it's been amazing to watch, from hive monitors, from collecting temperature and weight, to cameras that sit on the outside of the hives and watch bee traffic coming and going to be able to signify when your hive is beginning to collapse, to being able to use heat and infrared cameras to see what's happening inside the hive in the wintertime. It's, I think, really interesting, and I think we're about to see maybe the next jump to beekeeping. And what a great way to tie beekeeping and getting to know what's going on in your backyard and the world around you back into what kids are really interested in, which is tech.
Amen to that. I'm literally, I nominated myself for an article to be written on beekeeping technology, and I'm thinking, what? Oh, this is like heaven. It's heaven. But I want to see if Mark can speak, because I know Mark has done an awful lot of work with writing his own sort of curricular sort of course for a group of schools. Mark, are you there? Can you? I don't believe it. Oh, we're not there, Mark. I can't. I don't understand why. It's a really weird one. It's infuriating almost. There must be something. If you wiggle that little mouse and get that mute button off, then maybe that might work. I don't understand it. This is weird.
James, ring him and we can relay his comments.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Why don't I do that? I'll mute myself. And Wendy, are you happy to sort of carry on in terms of looking at the syllabus? And I'm interested in the cornerstone stuff that Yvonne you mentioned, because I think there'll be a couple of beekeepers out there if it's an easy thing to work with.
Do you want to keep on doing this, and I'll give me
yeah, okay.
Mark's phone number, and I'll ring him.
Mark, in the chat, if you want to email Wendy like you did before and give numbers, and we'll see if we can see if you can work you both in. But okay, so let's work on. So Cornerstone for a second, Yvonne. Was that a paid-for course? Or?
Yes, it's a curriculum, or their curriculum products are created by real teachers, tested in real classrooms, and they're proven to work. And it supports, the needs of the children, the schools, and the national curriculum. And some of the topics that I've got them in front of me. It's more people, if they Google Cornerstone's curriculum, they'll get it.
Okay.
But there's some fantastic topics, and our senior leadership team, head teacher, looked at the topics and chose the topics that fitted with our ethos in school. Being a forest school, our learning is taken outdoors as much as possible. So we're looking at practical stuff.
The forest school movement's like that. It's very open.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you aware? You'll forgive me on this. Are you aware of any more courses or structured syllabuses out there for kids with schools? I know the BBKA was doing something, weren't they, at one point?
They were. I mean, the BBKA curriculum, Bees in the curriculum, my personal view on that is it needs updating. I think the copy I've got, I think, is 2009, I think it is.
I have to say, I was trying to find it today. I couldn't find it anywhere.
No, it's very hard. I mean, I rang them recently to see if they got an updated version, but they haven't.
No.
And it desperately, and then that's one thing that I've got to be in my bonnet about. That there needs to be a central.
How many quips can you get in one sentence?
Sorry, and that was done without even any thought. There has to be a program, sort of a resource for teachers.
So okay, let me just be a little bit contentious with it here, because I mean we've set this out of date because we're beekeepers.
Yeah.
For any teacher that is wanting to get an introduction as to whether or not it's right for them as a school to have bees in there, do you think it's suitable as an introduction?
It is suitable as an introduction, but I think it needs to have some more links with the curriculum. And that's where cornerstones might come into help if people are wanting something that's dynamic.
Okay, and so it's probably quite handy anyway us talking about it, because for beekeepers out there from the UK side, knowing the BBK have actually got a guide, though outdated it is, it will provide some guidance. Equally, we've got something, they did some works, and this is the copy of it, it's called Cleeps. They did some work with Cleeps, which is a sort of a 9-page basic overview of school beekeeping, which is, again, it's a relatively useful document. I don't think it goes into too much detail, but it's probably a good starting point. And I'll put a link. We'll do an article about this afterwards, and I'll make sure I put a link in the blog for it. But just Sarah, we have obviously we've talked about it from the UK side. From the US, is there a sort of a grandiose plan, or you said you're putting something together? I mean, it must be. I mean, with the US being huge, it must be on a state level, I would presume. Am I right in suggesting that?
So that's kind of the big challenge, is finding something that's general enough that it can reach across 50 states. And even just in Oregon, where I live, my state is big enough that we have so many different regions, and beekeeping is so different everywhere. The Willamette Valley is north of me, and that's typically what a lot of people think of when they think of the Pacific Northwest. It's rainy, there's lots of evergreen trees, there's rivers everywhere, water usually isn't a problem. And then down where I am is a little more hilly. We still have great flowers and forage, but it is dry, and with climate change it's been getting more and more and more dry. And then in eastern Oregon it's all sagebrush and high desert, which is amazing sage honey, but beekeeping is so different. So the biggest challenge that I'm going to find is, while developing curriculum, making it general enough that it's usable for every beekeeper, but specific enough that it really matters, and you are getting detailed enough to be able to teach, and it's not just kind of the issues that I am having with the current curriculum that's out there is it's just a little too general. It's not very specific. It doesn't go very deep, but yeah, just trying to find those ways to go deep enough that the curriculum is really meaningful and the students learn a lot, but it's not too specific that it's irrelevant in places where beekeeping is so different than it is from one place to the other. Because beekeeping in Alaska and Hawaii and Florida and New York is completely different. So trying to find those similarities is going to be hard. And it would be great to see at some point to have a state-by-state beekeeping curriculum, but for now we're just working on something national. And then yeah, it would be awesome to kind of break it down, at least region per region.
I'd quite like to beekeep in Hawaii. If ever you can organise that for me, I'd quite like that.
Just think how hot it would be in a bee suit.
Oh God.
That's
Well,
true.
yes, yeah, fair enough, fair enough. I'd probably become that naked bee man. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah,
YouTube clip.
for the most
What's
part,
that about?
so there's only 2 islands in the Hawaiian chain that have varroa. So most islands don't have varroa mites, and they keep very gentle, very nice Italian bees, so they don't have to wear bees.
Wow. Way to do
Oh,
it.
the dream! Oh, the dream! All right. Well, I'll tell you what. So I've just got a little note in here. You can't get your microphone to work. I'm sorry to hear that, Mark. But look, one thing I will say, I'm going to try and get some comments from Mark separately to this, because I know he's very, very experienced with what he's done with the kids over here, with some of his curriculums that he's done. So it's a real shame, Mark. But I hope you're enjoying sort of being a part of this, but not in that respect. Okay, one thing that has come up as a question a couple of times, and I'm certainly going to put this to you, Yvonne, in terms of insurance. A lot of concern about beekeeping insurance if you're going to go into a school, theory as well as practical, actually. What's the thought there? And that came from Julia Hoggard, by the way, so thank you, Julia, for that coming in.
Yeah, I mean, insurance is a worry. Again, when I sort of spoke to BBK, they don't have a schools membership. They've got a corporate, but not schools. So as regards insurance, as I'm a member of BBKA, it comes under my insurance, comes from the BDI that I have, but also the public liability insurance of the school. But insurance is a tricky one.
So just to clarify, so did you say you come under the insurance of the school as well?
Yeah, but with what the head teacher has done is she's because the apiary itself is set as, even though it's on site, it's away from the school. So she's sort of included it on the public liability of the school, but it also comes under my insurance as well.
Okay, so your insurance, and clarify which policy that was, just so I'm clear.
It's the policy as a BBK member,
uh-huh.
And also the BDI insurance as well. So the hives at school are sort of tagged on to my own personal ones as well regarding insurance.
Have you found a similar thing with that, Sarah, from you? Have you looked at that from your side or not?
Insurance for me, at the moment I've not been installing hives on schools, and when I've advised schools who want hives, I've linked them up with their local beekeeping association, and strongly advised that they find teachers who really want to take ownership of the project, because just saying, oh, I want hives on the school so the kids can watch the bees, it's not a big enough commitment. They really need to take it seriously, get trained, become members of a local beekeeping association, get mentors. So there was a school that asked me to help them, and the first thing I did was call their local beekeeping association and say, are you up for partnering with this? Because I'm not prepared to take this responsibility. It's got to be the school taking full ownership and partnering with their local association. And taking it from there. It's not something you can go into lightly, installing hives in schools. I think it's fantastic, and I really want to see schools having hives on site, but they really need to go into it with their eye open. It's not like having a hamster in reception class.
No, right. No. Oh, the amount of time those hamsters die as well. Which is
Really?
Well, that teaches you about life and death, doesn't it? But I tell you, so just I think, it's something that concerns me a little bit there, which is, I mean, the BBKA can cover you personally, but also from a corporate side.
Yeah, there's no schools membership.
Yeah, which is I find slightly ironic in a way, but maybe that's something we need to probably bring up with them. You know, if we're trying to encourage kids into beekeeping. But just sort of from the US perspective, there, Sarah, do you have any issues on the insurance side? We seem to be very hot on it over here. Is there much from your side?
Yeah, well,
and how do you get around it?
I've been able to kind of, luckily, fly under the radar without, because I think the UK is light years ahead of us as far as beekeeping education and working with schools, and even your beekeeping in general, I think is just, it's so impressive and so developed, and I think that we're a few steps behind you, and so there's still not a lot of schools that have gotten bees or will allow bees, and it usually does get to that insurance part, and insurance companies here just have no idea what to do with us. When I went to get beekeeping insurance just for my nonprofit and all of the classes I teach and the programs that we run, they it took a long time to find an insurance company that knew what to do with me. So I just have general liability insurance for my nonprofit. And depending on the school district, because when I do my traveling bee lesson extravaganza events, I always bring a live observation hive. And so we usually, they want to see copies of my insurance for that. And then I also always have a safety plan. So I have a written plan that I've developed, and then I just kind of fill in the blanks with every school that I have. And I make sure that I know if there's a school nurse. I make sure that she has information about allergies. I know the most direct way to the nearest either urgent care or emergency room. Make sure that I've got any kind of emergency numbers that I need for the area. And then I also always have them right here as part of my backup plan. It's just topical things in case there is a stinging incident. So Allegra Intensive Cream is amazing. It will take the swelling down of any sting. And then for right away, I have Stops the Sting, which is colloidal oatmeal. And that literally makes the hurt go away within seconds. And so usually kids, a sting will just shock the bejesus out of them, and they'll start screaming because they have no idea what just happened. And so if I can get some of this on there, and then it just causes like concern and outrage. But if I can get some of this on them, it goes away within seconds. So yeah, I make sure I have a written plan whenever I'm doing an event. Or whenever I'm doing going into a school, and that really seems to help. It's kind of like showing them how I have an emergency plan in place already.
Yeah, I think that's actually invaluable advice, to be honest, because it's like, Christ, what do they call the health and safety plans you've got to do before you...
Risk assessment.
Risk assessments, yeah.
Yeah,
So we have a risk assessment for Hen Corner, and that's for all groups coming to us, but also when I go into schools, I've got 2 different risk assessments. And we've got all plans on what to do. But I think, it's great to see all those medications, but I think in UK schools, we're not able to apply medication. So actually, if a kid gets stung, an ice cube is probably the best thing to put on a sting. But I think that the children I've never had a child stung in any of the work that I've done. I've never had any of my course guests ever stung. In fact, the only person who's ever been stung from my bees apart from me was my husband once when he was doing some DIY 2 foot from the hive, banging the ground and napping them off.
That's right. We don't mind husbands.
Can you hear me, guys?
Ah,
Yes.
Hello.
Yay! Yes.
Hey, Mark.
Finally.
Now, I'll tell you what, we'll let you speak for the next half an hour. You can just have a dialogue of pent up.
I was just listening to Sarah's comments that she's not had anybody stung. In 6 years of working with children in schools, in community gardens and things where we've had beehives, I've only ever had 1 sting, and that was because a child decided to try and rescue a drowning bee from a water butt.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is it is really quite rare. So we reach about 13,000 kids every year, and I've been doing Kids and Bees for 3 years now. So out of however many tens of thousands that is, I've only had 2 kids get stung, and both times was a huge learning experience, and I learned what not to do. One was he just stuck his finger down in the screen of of our observation hive where we had fed the bees, and then I took the feed off, and he was trying to get stung to impress his friends, and the volunteer that was at that table had their back turned for 1 minute. And then the other one was kind of a long story, and it was a pretty extreme situation. The person it was not my event, it was just an event that I was at, and the person that had put together the observation hive put it together really shoddy, and there's bees just pouring out of the bottom of the observation hive. Oh. And so the fact that only 1 kid got stung was quite miraculous.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's just bring on it for a second, because incidentally, I would have probably been that kid poking the bee when I was young, and I would never have done it again. So that's sort of I bet he didn't do it again either.
can I just ask Yvonne and Sarah whether in the UK whether they could use tea tree oil, because that works really well to take away the sting, and well, not to remove the sting itself, but obviously once the sting's been taken out, tea tree oil prevents the itching, prevents the swelling. So is that something you could use?
Well, within our school, I mean, our guidance is that we just use a cold compress. So we just get a ice cube or a cold, one of those that's in most first aid kits, or a wet cold flannel. That's as much as we remove the sting, and then it's a cold compress afterwards.
Yeah, we wouldn't give any medication either. But I think a lot of it, as we've already said, it's in the prevention, it's in the risk assessment, it's in the guidelines. It's explaining to the children that in that box is 60, 70,000 bees that sting, and they don't really want, you give them a little bit of sense of reality, and they do recognise the risk. I found for us last year, the time that was most risky was where I had an observation hive set up, and I had the queen in the observation hive so that the children could see everything, see the whole frame and every part of it. And by the time we'd got to the afternoon session, most of her girls had discovered where Mum was, and then were flying from the hive that was all cordoned off in the corner of the garden, and were now trying to get into Mum in the observation hive, and I just had to what the children were stepping back, because obviously if you'd moved the observation hive out of the area, that wouldn't have happened, but because it was still in the vicinity of the host hive, we just had to say, look, you can't go too close, it's just not worth the risk. But that was several hours into the day.
I think just to go back a little step, because I want to bring in a question from a chap called Martin who put it in about his own granddaughter, because there's a very different distinction here about how to deal with a sting in a school and how to deal with a sting when it's your own family. As far as I'm concerned from the school, and this may be different, Sarah, in the US, but certainly in the UK, every school has a different policy on giving and receiving of medicines. The first thing I would do is absolutely working with the school on a risk assessment that you're working with them, and work out what their policy is on giving of medicines. The tea tree oil seems a natural thing that you've just said there, Wendy, absolutely. But some of us will probably realise it's even as stupid as teachers can't even put plasters on kids anymore because of the risk of the
it's allergies again.
Allergies, yeah.
Exactly, all of that. So I think just as a bit of advice for me on that, talk to the school, work on the risk assessment that we've all talked about, and run through a policy of how you deal with a sting. And equally, obviously, it depends on where the sting is as well, as to where it's all going to be. So I think it's just very important that you've got the desired medicine available if there's a worst case scenario, but work with the school to decide what their policies are and how you want to roll that forward. Mark, have you, obviously now you can speak, have you done that sort of thing with your schools? So
there's only one school I'm working with that actually has bees on the premises. The rest of them don't, and it's quite a recent project I've just started. So it's I've not had to deal with that just yet in school. When I've had bees at the community gardens and at the youth club, where I used to keep bees at the youth club, the youth workers used to give out plasters and things, but they kind of like had consent from parents to do that, and they knew which if the children had allergies to plasters and things, so who they could give plasters and things to. I do always carry antihistamine cream in my bee bag, so if I need it, or if my beekeeping students need it, I give it to them, but I wouldn't administer it to children. I might give it to the parent and say, you can give them some of that if you want to, but you have to administer it yourself as a parent, because I can't do it. So I get around it that way by getting the parent or the guardian to do it. So
yeah, good idea.
I have it, and they have the option of using it, but I wouldn't give it to them myself, because as a qualified first aider, I know I could get in trouble for doing that. But just going back briefly to the risk assessment and the risk of getting stung in the first place and things that we were just discussing before, what strikes me as quite odd is that a lot of schools in London and in the country generally have chickens in their school, and Sarah will know this because Sarah does this with schools. The risk of getting injured by a chicken is far, far more likely than the risk of getting injured by a bee. Yeah. But they don't consider the risk assessment for chickens as being anywhere near as dangerous as bees. But you're more likely to be kicked or pecked or have blood drawn by a chicken,
Yeah.
by a feisty chicken, than you are to be stung by a bee. But lots of schools have chickens, but very few schools have bees because they're really worried about their health and safety.
Damn chickens. And then it's the rats that go with them as well. Sorry.
Into that, with regard to bees on the premises, I completely understand that schools take installing hives very, very seriously. But if you then think how many schools are deliberately planting the pollinators, that are deliberately trying to attract bees into the school playground, have they done their risk assessments there? So that's more likely, the more likely place for children to get stung, where they've planted lavender and the kids are playing with the lavender and playing with the bees and trying to catch them in their hands at playtime. They're more likely to be stung there than if they've got hives even on the roof of the school. They're much more likely to get stung in that environment. And I know where we are in London, my bees are flying, a couple of miles around. There's several schools that they're welcome to access. And I've got primary schools are fascinated, want to know more, whereas I've got some secondary schools absolutely freaking out. What if they swarm? What if the whole swarm goes into the exam room in the summer? A mass hysteria. It's so unlikely to happen.
Actually, we've got a question from a chap called Quentin, who said that they regularly get requests to put beehives in inner city junior schools, usually on roofs. Does anyone have any experience of doing this? They tend to give it a wide berth, but are they being too cautious?
Can I just ask, are the schools asking for the hives because they want the children to be involved in the beekeeping, or is it just ticking the box to saying, yay, we've got beehives, aren't we trendy? Or is it an educational thing? Is it participation? Is it ownership? Do we know why they're asking for the hives?
No. So, I mean, what would be your advice for either situation, Sarah, on that?
I think if somebody wanted me to manage a hive on their premises, because they wanted to do something for the environment and they wanted to be able to explain that it's a great thing and it's helping with pollination and it's helping with the ecosystem and all of this. One, I'd rather just have them on my own space. I've got space for more bees than I can manage. If I was looking to have them somewhere, I probably would rather go to somebody else's garden than into a school because of all the things we've spoken about. However, if the school are really wanting to take ownership and say this is something that we want to do, then you go and you do a site visit, you do a risk assessment, and you see where is the best place to site this hive. If schools are thinking that roofs are better because the bees are going to fly up and out of the way, it's about educating them and recognising the bees are going to then come down wherever the forage is. So if the hives are on the roof but the forage is in the playground, it doesn't matter whether the hive is like 20 foot in the air or on the ground. They're still going to be foraging in the playground. So it's just a case of meeting with the school, meeting with the teachers, asking them why they want it, and that partnership, that slow journey, encouraging ownership and finding ways of meeting their request. It's not necessarily, okay, put a hive on the roof, but why do they want it and how we can look to meet those needs together in partnership.
I think that's a very comprehensive answer to that, and I hope that helps, Quentin.
Yeah.
Can I just chip in and say that in London Beekeepers Association, in the last 18 months, we've had to remove a number of beehives from schools that got bees. They requested people to put bees there, and then they weren't really managed appropriately, and we had to come in and take them away because they couldn't manage them. They didn't have means to manage them themselves long term, and when they became a nuisance, we had to go in and remove them, or we had to find a member who would take on the hives and deal with them because they were no longer wanted. So schools quite often ask for bees, but don't think about the long-term management of them and how they're going to be looked after. And I think quite often it's like impulsive and it's short-sighted.
I think it's a bit naive, isn't it, in that respect? I think it's just it's a tick sheet, and it's cool to have that, and we're helping everybody, and it's good for the kids to learn. But I think you're actually right there.
Bees is bling. Bees is bling is what we call it at London Beekeepers.
That is such a London term. That's about as London as you can get. But look, I'll tell you what I want to do. We've got a few more minutes like, sort of coming through. I want to bring in another side of it. I mean, all we've actually really talked about here is we talked about sort of working with schools, and I think there's a large part of this which we're missing, which is there's the associations and trying to encourage more children to be a part of an association. Certainly, part of my local association, we've got some very active. We've got a relatively active youth side of it. Down in the south of the UK, generally organised by fleet beekeepers, we get sort of groups of kids who go over to compete in European competitions and all this sort of stuff. And I suppose I wanted to really bring Sarah, you into this here, because I know you work very closely with the American Beekeeping Federation as a program director. Is that right, for kids and beekeeping? So could you tell us a little bit about your experience there from the US, and if there's something that you could recommend we could learn as beekeepers over here in the UK? That would be a great help.
Yeah, so I'm the program director for the American Beekeeping Federation Kids and Bees program. And basically, the main thing that I do for them is every single year when we have our national conference, which is always the first or second week of January, we have a large kids and bees program, and that's our only real opportunity to engage with the local public and reach out to help with the education outreach. Oh no, I'm losing battery. So we
if you go, don't worry. We'll put on an American accent and try and fill in. Don't worry. And I'm just sharing the screen, by the way, with all the photos that you sent over to me, so people can see what you've been doing.
Yeah. So our last big event was the last Friday, and it was in Jacksonville, Florida. So every year, that's kind of the special and unique part about the American Beekeeping Federation's national conference. Is every year we go to some large metropolitan area, and we put on a conference. Beekeepers from around the U.S. come to the conference, and then my job to plan a big Kids and Bees event. And so this year we had 500 local kids from all around the area in Florida come to this 3-hour beekeeping event that had 30 different exhibits at it that were all hands-on in some way or another to learn all about honeybees and beekeeping. And then I staff it with about 30 volunteers, one for each table, and they're all beekeepers. And so they come already having the expertise and the passion and the knowledge about bees. And altogether, there was probably about 700 to 800 local people that came to the conference to come and bring their kids. But then they ended up having the best time. They learned so much about honeybees as well when they were going around and doing the stations with their kids. And then we also give them an opportunity to go to the trade show so they can support the beekeepers by buying candles, buying bee cards, any kind of like the knickknacks that they have at the trade show. And then a few of the moms actually stuck around and also bid on a few items in the silent auction. It was a really, really great way to reach out to the community and get the community more involved in what we're doing, and really the importance of bees and the importance of beekeepers. So that's our major event. And then I also do the same thing on smaller scales at the Western Apicultural Society meeting, the Eastern Apicultural Society meeting, and I also host a couple of beekeeping academies throughout the year where I take a small group of kids and teach them how to keep bees, which is, I think, really similar to a lot of the programs that are going on in the UK. But that is, one of the things that I'm trying to do right now is to kind of write a handbook on how I do what I do and why I do what I do and how it can be done on smaller scales at different state conferences. Because every year when I do these programs at this large conference, the American Beekeeping Federation conference, I get a lot of requests of, oh, can you come to my state fair? Because the state fair is really the time where the beekeeping associations get to reach out and engage with the local public, or come to our beekeeping convention and do this. But it's a lot of work, and there's only one of me. So what I would really like to do is establish kind of some instructions for people to be able to do this kind of caliber of work in their own states. And I'm more than happy to share it with any friends in the UK and beyond as well.
We'd love to have that. I mean, it's amazing what you're doing, and I think some of our conventions, I mean, we haven't got that many, but I mean, certainly the two bigger conventions we have in the National Honey Show and the BBKA sort of spring convention, I mean, they could take a real leaf out of that book with the numbers that you're talking about there. I mean, I don't know whether they can do it on this scale. I'd love to think they would, and they'd have the willingness to do it. But certainly, to get kids into it, they're the next generation, right? Without them coming through, I mean, let's be brutally honest. Our demographic isn't necessarily on the younger side in the UK. So
I mean, and then I of course want to bring up the next generation of beekeepers and people that love the art and the science of beekeeping. But also, this is the next generation of our principals in our schools that make the decision as to whether or not there can be bees there. These are the city planners that are going to be plant bee-friendly flowers and bee-friendly gardens on city property. These are attorneys and people that run insurance companies. And having as many people as we possibly can out there that understand and love honeybees and other kinds of bees too, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, absolutely. Wendy, I think we had a question, didn't we, about age? Is that right?
Yes, we did. Andy's asked, at what age would you be happy to allow a child to participate in beekeeping?
Because they look pretty young in there, didn't they, Sarah? The guys you were attracting were very young, and we've got 8- and 9-year-olds from you, Yvonne. What?
I do a week-long camp every year for kindergarteners and first graders, which are 5 and 6-year-olds, and they're awesome. They totally get it. I had one 6-year-old lecture, one of the museum volunteers, about how bees see nectar guides in UV light, and really go into detail. They're very smart, and so I have bee suits that fit down to 4-year-olds that I bring out into the bees, and they get it and they love it. So I don't know if there is really a too young.
I think the question of too young is how small a bee suit you can find.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because I've taken observation hives into reception class, which are like 4 or 5-year-olds, but I couldn't find a bee suit that would fit a 4 or 5-year-old. They just don't make them that small.
No, I feel a bit weird Googling it, but I've just Googled kids in beekeeping suits. And I tell you what, it's some of the photos, they're adorable, but they are looking at it. I mean, here, let me just try and share this one, because I think it's a lovely image. Hang on a second, and I'll then tell you the story about how young you've really got to be to keep bees. You've seen this one here? So look, bless her. The veil is almost half her body.
Oh, yeah.
That looks very much like some of our children. I took our reception children up there, 4 or 5-year-olds, and we put them in the 11 to 12-year-old suits. So they'd got the full leg tucked in the Wellingtons. So it was.
James, I think one of the pictures I sent you is a family with bee suits, and I think the children are quite small there.
They are. I'll tell you what. I'll find that as I'm. Here we are. Here we are. One of the biggest mistakes of my life was done around a beehive, and my eldest, Sebastian, and I was looking in the hive, and I drive up to my hive, and I was parking it quite near where the hives were, and I was doing a general inspection, and he was only about probably going on 3, I think, maybe around that time. And I picked up my frame of bees, and I walked it over to. I checked the queen wasn't there. I walked it over to the car, and he was literally like this, looking at the window and at the frame of bees, and then literally just looked at me and just went, "I need a wee." and he was toilet training at the time, and I was sitting there going, "What? How do I get out of this situation?" So that's too young. Don't do that. Don't do that. I'll find that photo as we're going through, but I just want to sort of kick this all through. So, what age can you encourage to start? Basically, as old as they are to fit a bee suit, which is great.
But you start before that, so you can go into the schools with a nursery or preschool, talking about bees, explaining what's happening. You can do a lot of theoretical stuff, and you can take videos in and slideshows. We did quite a lot of work where we we do a presentation which includes clips from the Bee movie, which the kids are familiar with, and then they say, but hang on a minute, you told us that they were all girls, so why are all the boys doing that? I said, yep, that's something that they've got wrong in the film. And then you said that there's only one mum. Why are there lots of mums in the film? Yep, again, and you can use the things where they've taken artistic license and show, well, actually that's how they've told the story, but actually this is what happens in reality. So there we go. That was a lovely family that came.
Look at that little one.
This is a family.
I do something very similar to what Sarah does. I do sort of interactive assembly with young children about bees, and I get them to dress up as bees and do waggle dances.
Yeah.
You can make it interactive like that. They love anything like that. If you get them dressed up as bees and get them to shake their booties like Beyonce, they have a right laugh.
Get them all to wear a pair of bug glasses. You can get them from most gadget shops.
Can I bring in a question that's been asked?
I tell you what, Wendy, before you do that, let me just share this for a second, because I want to make sure that people know how to answer questions, because we haven't done this for a while, so I'm totally out of practice. If you're watching this live on the Beecraft site, I'm just going to share my screen now for a second. Basically, you're probably seeing this as we speak, and underneath you've got the Ask a Question bit. If you just click there to ask a question, we will pick that up and we can bring it in. As it's a live discussion now on a Wednesday evening, we can bring it in. So please do ask any questions you want. Sorry, Wendy, go for it.
Okay, well, there's a couple actually. One is from Simon. Are there any downloadable resources that can be recommended for using with a school to prepare a lesson plan?
Well, so I'll only bring that up, which was that one, which is a CLEAP study, which is from the BBKA website, and I'll make sure I put a downloadable link in a follow-up article.
Okay, great.
Anything else?
And the other one from Rob. Are there any thoughts on ways children can engage in the many beekeeping fora that are around on Facebook that have age restrictions to join and get involved? I'd just like to mention here that we've got our Bee Kids Club, which the youngster children, I think from 6 upwards, can join, and that gives them access to Facebook page. The BRB kids have got their own Facebook page, which they can access with parental permission, obviously. And we've got a little pack and 2 pages in the magazine that are devoted totally to bee kids. They get a code wheel so they can decode the message that comes through in the magazine every month. And you know, that's something I'd just like to bring that in, that we have got a Facebook page for that. But does anybody else use any other of the online forums or anything to engage with children, and what's appropriate?
God,
I haven't used.
Yeah.
I haven't used online forums for children, but I do like the stuff that the BBK are bringing out with their Friends of the Honeybee, and that's a lot of information about honeybees that's really accessible for children. And when you sign up, you get a nice badge and you get packs of seeds and a little magazine that comes through. So that's a great way that you can get more information, but it's not a forum like Facebook and the engaging with the other beekeepers.
No, it's tough, isn't it? I mean, forums per se are generally one which, certainly as a parent, I would have sort of not necessarily liked my children to be a part of. With Facebook, I know the age restriction is 13, but I know a lot of what the Bee Kids do on their Facebook page, which actually, incidentally, adults should join. I mean, some of the stuff that Pam puts out is absolutely phenomenal, in the sense of some of the photos that she shares and all that sort of stuff are absolutely phenomenal. But equally, funny enough, Sarah, who's I think is probably she's back. I know the battery died. She does an awful lot on Instagram, and I know a lady we had on before for talking about beekeeping photos. Equally, again, Instagram is a huge resource in terms of beekeeping photos, which I know kids obviously they love Instagram. It's a visual entity. That could be a very good one to use. But forums per se, not really that I know of specifically for kids. Mark, do you know anything on that?
I don't. I can't think of any. And like you said, if I was a parent, I wouldn't particularly want my child on any of the beekeeping Facebook groups because they can be quite acrimonious at times, put it that way. I wouldn't want a child to be on them.
No, no, I know what you mean.
I think there's a lot of concern about child safety on the internet these days. I wouldn't feel comfortable letting any children on any kind of sort of internet forum. To be honest, I think they're sort of a magnet for people that are up to no good.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. Although I will say, BeeKids isn't acrimonious on their Facebook page. It is very much a child sort of aim, really. Sarah, I know you skipped out and skipped on. Probably your battery died on you. But is there anything in the US in terms of online resources for children, in terms of forums or social networks or places where teenage beekeepers, primarily because of the age restrictions or younger, can meet and discuss and talk? Anything you know?
No, not really. That was the one thing I was so excited about with EBRA when they were going down with International Bee Research Association, when they were really working on the kids stuff with the Bee World project, is they had developed a website, and the back end of it was to be like a blog and interactive map where people could really get online and discuss for the teachers and the students what they're doing. So I don't think, as I knew of at that time, that was really the only thing of its kind, and I don't think that there's really been anything else since then developed. I know I have a lot of contact with schools across the world, and the one thing that I do is connect with them through Twitter. Usually, a lot of schools in the U.S. are on Twitter because it just seems to be a little more maybe kid-friendly or less creeper-friendly than Facebook is.
Yeah.
So there seems to be a lot of schools that are on Twitter, and then they connect on Skype. And so schools in Italy, in the U.S., or in the U.K. and the U.S. will set up Skype dates to talk to each other about what they're learning about bees, or sometimes they'll have me come in via Skype as like a guest speaker, and we'll kind of talk. So that's how we use the internet to connect, but I can't really think of anywhere out there that's a really good forum for kids to get on and connect, or classrooms to get on and connect, and I would say that that's definitely needed, and something away from general social media that has some sort of a monitor, because I know for me one of the most frustrating parts of our beekeeping sites in the U.S. is somebody will post a question and then there's 72 answers and probably 80% of them are incorrect, and people that have very strong and entitled opinions are oftentimes the most wrong. And so that's just not a good way to learn beekeeping.
You can't. But sadly, in the social world that we live in at the moment, it's not necessarily going to be the same, and they call it the voice of the audience, which is those people who are wrong get trounced, generally. So, I don't know. We'll see. I tell you what, though, one thing I will say is we're redeveloping the Beecraft website, hopefully this year. It may be something, Wendy, just for you and I to think about in terms of, because BeeKids and Beecraft, we want to bring BeeKids more in, and Pam does such an amazing job. Maybe it's time to really sort of give that forum for the kids online globally to interact and have the ability to do this sort of stuff. You know, it's not hard to put in. So maybe that's what it is. Sorry, go on, Wendy.
No, I was just going to say, Pam and I have been talking about the training packs that I put together for adults, and we're thinking about whether we could put together a pack for children that actually could link in, if you like, with any beginner beekeeper. But predominantly,
the problem with this is that kids are so online. I mean, it's an online community now. It's one of those things. But anyway, I'll tell you what, we've actually run out of time already. But I do want to ask one very, very important question, and this is to, I suppose, to all of you, because something very dear to my heart is the kids who perhaps aren't your normal kids who go to normal schools and all this sort of stuff. One of the things that I've heard beekeeping is incredibly good for is perhaps kids with behavioural problems or ADHD or some mental issue that they've got. And I just wanted to see if any of you have experienced that personally. I've only read about it. I haven't yet worked with any of the kids that I work with in this. And so, Yvonne, why don't we start with you? Have you found it for you?
Yeah, we had a young man in the first year of our ventures who had some pretty difficult anger issues. His concentration levels in the classroom weren't good, and we introduced him to beekeeping, and to be quite honest, I thought he had been doing it for years. He was an absolute natural, and we had discussions with him about how we could help him if he did feel these periods of anger, and he just asked, "Can I go and sit with the bees?" So
Wow.
we got him a bench, and whenever he felt wound up, he'd go and sit with the bees. At a safe distance, of course, but.
Mm.
And in general, the confidence of the children, it just goes sky high. And the knock-on effect is they improve within the classroom, in subjects within the classroom.
That's good to hear. And Sarah, have you found that? Mark, have you found it? What's your experience?
Sorry, Mark.
I used to keep bees in a youth club in an adventure playground, and we had quite a few of the kids that were involved in our beekeeping project were sort of like ex-gang members. They'd been in trouble with the police and things, and I think it did help to kind of ground them and bring them down to earth and calm them down a bit. And it did give some of them that were, you know, a bit misguided something to focus on. So I think it can be like a useful tool for, you know, for young people that have sort of behavioural problems, problems socialising things as well. I've also tried doing some bee-related education projects with children with severe learning difficulties, and they were a bit harder to work with. I had a particularly bad experience with a child with autism who freaked out. That really disturbed me. But yeah, but definitely children that have had, like, you know, behavioural problems, children that have had problems with like crime and gang culture and things like that. I've had positive experiences of working with them.
What about you, Sarah?
Yeah, I've got one of the biggest fans of my bees is my friend's son who's got Down syndrome, and every time he sees me, it's bees, honey, bees, honey, bees, honey, and he's been round and he loves getting up close and seeing them. He's not handling a frame, but absolutely fascinated in it, and just the way his mind works, he loves them, and it's always a topic of conversation every time we see each other. On the other hand, I've got another friend whose daughter's got autism, and yeah, she's just cautious, and it's just helping the children, if they're feeling confident, to recognise that as a positive thing, and looking to take them by the hand, step by step, as far as they're prepared to go in their own personal comfort zones, and maybe you know, standing near a hive, watching them. Is the first step, then maybe putting a bee suit on, standing in the hive watching is the next step, and you just go in partnership together, step by step, and I think it's a fantastic thing. I think children, people of all ages, can benefit so much from bees, that we shouldn't be excluding anybody for any reason, just because of our preconceived ideas. But I think there's so much that can be gained, and I think you know, children with special needs or children from challenging backgrounds, let's not put them in a box or just see them with that label. Let's give them the same opportunities as we would give other children.
Yeah, totally. And Sarah, have you found that from in the US? Or have you done much work with that side of things?
Yeah, definitely. So the two things, one thing I always see 100% of the time is when I come into a classroom to set up my exhibit stations and I bring in the live bees, the kids that are the most wily and the ones that have the hardest time sitting still, and the ones that are the ones that seem like they need a little bit of extra hands-on help, and maybe they're the most afraid when they first come in. They just are so empathic and they feel their emotions so strongly that when they see me uncover the bees, they're like, "Wah!" They are always the ones that are just glued to the hive, and they love to touch it and smell it and feel the warmth, and they want to hug it, and they're always the ones that are the hardest to get out of the room at the end. And so there really is just this amazing connection between special needs kids and honeybees, and I would love to see that developed further. When I do my big, huge traveling exhibit show with the American Beekeeping Federation, I always look really hard for schools for the deaf and blind and schools for special needs kids, and try so hard to get them engaged and to get them to come into the to the event. And it's really hard to kind of I haven't had any success reaching out to them, so I need to find I just need to switch up my game plan and find a better way to be able to convince them that it's a great thing for their students to be a part of, because after 4 years of running the program, I haven't been able to really breach that wall. And then the other thing is the hardest the hardest beginning to a program that I've ever done was last year. I did just a talk, my general talk on sustainable agriculture and beekeeping, and I brought my observation hive with me to a home for homeless teenage girls that were all very highly at-risk youth. And it was a rough beginning. They were a rough crowd for sure. And but about 10 minutes into my talk, it was just so amazing to see their shoulders go down and see them completely melt and become so incredibly engaged in what I was saying and how amazing bees are, and being able to really use how, you know, in the U.S. we have so many issues with large industrial farming and pesticides, and bees are, they're really, they're an at-risk population too. So being able to use that to connect to these girls was really cool to be able to see that, one, and two, for them to see a woman that is doing a job that is outside of the confines of a 9-to-5 office job. They just haven't had a lot of examples in their life of strong women leaders that are working in science. And so it was really, really cool to be able, I didn't even see that part of it, but I got that feedback afterwards, for them to have a positive role model that's doing something outside of the box, when a lot of them probably feel like they're never going to fit into regular society having a normal job. And so just, and maybe they're not going to go on to be beekeepers, but just kind of like getting their gears turning and thinking that there are alternative careers out there that could be more suitable to them and what they think that they can do in their competence level, I think is really, really important. So I'd love to see programs for people that are at risk or have special needs be more developed in the future.
Yeah, totally. And funny enough, everything that we talked about with the schools, I would imagine is sort of is exaggerated even more with the sort of the special schools which look after these kids, because I'd imagine they have to jump through even more hoops to deal with it. But I think the just deserves that you get from dealing with it, and you know, some of the more disadvantaged kids who don't see this stuff, you know, bees and beekeeping and beehives are so far out there. Especially, you know, as easy as observation hives, where they don't perhaps have to have that practical element of being involved with it. That there is something, and you said it, Sarah, magical, of this link between a child and bees. And I don't know if it's the fact that they think they might sting them, so there's an edgy sort of danger bit to them. There's a mystical intrigue about what the hell's going on with them. And yet they've never even seen a hive before. They just see them flying around the lavender, and they think, hey, they're cool. And the moment they see and they mix in with a hive, suddenly this whole being comes out of sort of, as you said earlier on, with the thousands and thousands of bees which are within it, Sarah, as you said. It's suddenly a whole new beast. It's not one single tiny little bee. It's an entire colony, and I think it just blows their minds, which for certain, and the autism side, and you alluded to it there, Mark, and you did, I think it was Sarah, I think you said it, the autistic side, I should imagine, is probably the most challenging for certain areas of the autistic spectrum, because some of it is, it's about the control element, and suddenly when you got the bees flying everywhere and it has haphazard, I imagine that's probably quite difficult for them. But anyway, look, the problem with this is I could talk about children and beekeeping for even more than anything else, which is probably quite difficult to imagine. But I just think with kids anyway, you got to take time. Being a father of two, looking after an awful lot of kids in my past, I think you've got to give children time, and even more time with children than bees, because ultimately they're, as you said, Sarah, they're the next generation of what we're going to be doing. And I just want to share with you 3 photos to finish us all on, because they've come from Yvonne, and I think they're lovely photos. Yvonne, I love these ones, so thank you for giving them to me. You're welcome. We want to see more. We want to see more of this, right? We want to see more kids. Let me just freeze it so you can see it. We want to see more kids at the hives. We want to see more kids Eating the honey. God, he looks pretty.
That little boy there, he's ready to do his junior basic assessment this year.
Oh, bless him.
Wow.
And the hive that they were opening up, we were actually doing some grafting that day. We were setting that hive up to remove the queen, get some eggs, some young larvae, and do some grafting that day, and we did. So they were just getting ready for that.
Good for you. Who says 8 and 9-year-olds don't understand the complex scientific stuff, right? And then ultimately, obviously, look at this. Bless him. Look at that.
Now that we incorporated maths into that session, weights and measures, volume, the whole caboodle.
Good for you all. I applaud you all. I applaud you all. And you know what? That's what we've got to do, right? As beekeepers, we're here to look after the next generation, bring them through, and try and infuse some of our love and passion for the topic of beekeeping into our little ones. And certainly, just don't do what I did and take them while they're potty training. Not a good idea to mix the two. But look, I can only say, look, I'm just going to run through the bottom here. Wendy, thank you, obviously, for all of your time as always. It's wonderful there. Sarah, have you got any last sort of nuggets of advice that you want to give us here in the UK and around the world as to what we should do with our kids and beekeeping? Last nugget?
Oh my gosh. Just love your bees. Share your love. That's really what that's what comes through the strongest. Kids are so sensitive and they're little truthometers, and so if you just speak from your heart and share how much you love the bees and what they mean to you, then that's really all you need to do, and the rest is easy.
Share your beekeeping love of always. And Rodri, mate, thank you. I know you've had a hard day, buddy. Thanks for joining us, mate. Do you enjoy that?
Yeah, it was very interesting to see all the different perspectives across, a global perspective now. It's, very interesting.
It's good. We're going to go down to our schools now and get them all in. And Yvonne, have you got any last sort of little nugget of information for anyone?
Bees and kids do mix.
Yeah, nice one. Yeah, absolutely agree. And Sarah, thank you for joining us all the way from Hen Corner. Last thing for you, obviously.
I think with bees and kids, the people who are most scared are the adults. I don't think, and I think let's encourage the adults to face some of those fears and realise that actually it can be done in a really easy way as long as you're using common sense. You weigh up the risks, and there's just a fantastic, huge world, both inside that little box, but also all around us that the kids can learn and benefit so much from.
Oh, you're bang on with that. I think you're right. Adults are most afraid. And my lastly, thanks to Mark, who came on literally the last minute. We sorted out your sound in the end. And have you got any last little nuggets from your vast experience with it all, Mark?
Just be enthusiastic, spread your enthusiasm, share your passion for beekeeping. The best environmental educators are people who are passionate and dynamic, and that's what you need to be if you want to get children involved. You need to be passionate, you need to be dynamic. And unfortunately, not everybody has those abilities, but that's what you need to be. You need to be enthusiastic and dynamic and really spread your passion and to get your message across.
Amen to that. Totally agree. And on that note, on that nice note, and on those nice photos, I just want to thank everybody here who's watching. I really enjoyed that one. I love it. We're going to get this. We're going to get this repurposed as a proper article about beekeeping with children. I'll get all the links that we've got. I'll get some links to Sarah's Hen Corner is on there. Obviously Sarah's stuff with the ABF and all that lot. So we'll try and get as much in this article as we possibly can. Next month we're going to be talking about exams for this year, because obviously we're still in the off season. We've still got to wake our bees up at some point. So we're going to be talking about exams next month. So do tune in for that. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you to everyone here. And off we go. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.